and welcome to the Absolute Gamecast. Today I'll be discussing one of the most influential fan game series in Five Nights at Freddy's history, Five Nights at Candy's. If you've been a longtime FNAF fan, I'm sure you've heard this series already, but for those who haven't, I'll explain it here briefly. Five Nights at Candy's is a FNAF fan game released back in July 2015 by Emil Macko, and is still being worked on today with the highly anticipated fanverse title Five Nights at Candy's 4, and the spin-off title FNAF Fur coming soon. The series has become so popular over its 8-year run that it's arguably grown a fan base all its own. This video will contain some story spoilers, so if you haven't checked out any of these games, I recommend downloading them for free over on GameJolt before continuing this video. But with that said, let's get into the first game. Five Nights at Candy's 1 came out July 18th, 2015 and received a remaster on August 14th, 2019. For the sake of this video, I'll be grouping them together because they're mostly the same aside from a few graphical and quality of life improvements. In Five Nights at Candy's, you play as a night security guard, Mary Schmidt, who you're going to want to remember for later. You spend 5 nights using the 2 doors to your sides and the window in front of you to defend yourself. When most animatronics are at the door, you'll see their eyes glow in the dark. On night 5, all the animatronics from the past nights are no longer around, and instead you have the first boss battle of Remastered and the only boss in the original game, the Rat, who's relatively simple to deal with because he only goes to the doors. However, his eyes don't glow in the dark like a few of the others, and he's also very fast. But with trial and error, you will eventually defeat him and receive your final check. Once you survive Night 5, you unlock the Extras menu and are able to access the remastered exclusive Final Challenge. Visiting the Rat's page and zooming into his picture gives you a code. Entering the code into the custom night leads to what appears to be a normal night until checking the main stage, where you're staring face to face with Shadow Candy, the true final boss, and enter Null Night. Null Night will seem challenging at first glance, but in its simplest form, all you have to do is look at every camera, one at a time, utilizing both the darkness and the camera's night vision to locate Shadow Candy. Staring at him causes him to move to a different camera and vision type. He can't kill you unless you lose all your power. Instead, what he'll do if he reaches your doors is he'll teleport into your room, steal a chunk of your power, and set you back 1 hour in the night. To reset this, you must look on the cameras and find the origami cat, who will be mentioned later in this video. Keep up this pace and eventually you'll make it to 6 AM and receive the final cutscene of the game. Overall, I like these games, although I recommend playing Remastered over the original because it's essentially the definitive version of the game. But both games are great, so the decision's totally up to you, and you can always play both if you want. The next game in this video is Five Nights at Candy's 2, released on February 28, 2016. In this game you play as Marilyn Schmidt, a teenager who lost a bet and has to spend 5 nights in an abandoned robotics factory responsible for creating the Candy's animatronics, who are now withered and rotting away in the factory you're stuck in. After you beat the final night, the building goes up in flames and burns to the ground. You have very little defense in this game, only being able to deflect animatronics by luring them in or scaring them off by calling phones, scattered throughout the building, which are disabled temporarily upon successfully luring an animatronic. Many people write this off as just another copy-paste audio lure mechanic from millions of other FNAF fan games. And while I can't quite explain why, I've never really felt that way. Something about it just feels so interesting to me that I feel like the mechanic is more original than people give it credit for. There's also the penguin and the rat on the final night, who will appear randomly on your camera, and if you don't look away in time, they disable your camera for a short time. I'm not sure what the consensus is on this game nowadays, so if you want to, please leave your thoughts in the comments. But when it came out, FNAF 2 had a mixed reaction from the fans and the creator as well, who still appreciated the game and what it did for the series, even if it wasn't up to his standards. But despite that, I've always liked it for its gameplay, story, and its designs, which is another complaint I've heard towards the game. And I think it deserves a look if you're able to. I feel like this game is very underrated and you should definitely give it a try. Final game as of now, and the final game of this video, is Five Nights at Candy's 3. Released on March 3rd, 2017, in this game you play as Mary from the first game during her childhood, which is why she was important to remember. Mary's been suffering from horrific nightmares of demonic versions of the rat and cat from the first and second game respectively, who used to be people in costumes before candies existed. It's revealed that this is because Mary witnessed something traumatic that she has since repressed, and the only way she can end the nightmares is to face her fears head on. This game is very similar to FNAF 4, but in a way where it still feels original. You're in Mary's childhood bedroom with 3 entrances, a door and 2 closets, as well as your bed behind you, where you have to go occasionally to keep a tape player going, which speeds up the night. To keep the rat from getting in, you just have to shine your light at him and he'll leave. But if he does get into your room, you have to shine him repeatedly with the flashlight until he dives under your bed, where you must then find which side of the bed he's on. Go back up and look at the opposite direction until you hear him leave. Shine your light at him again and he finally leaves your room. The cat works differently. He'll spawn directly at either end of the room and must be shined with the flashlight to drive him away. If you don't, he'll steal your tape player, slowing down the night until he inevitably jump scares you sometime after, unless Rat gets you first. There's one more threat, but I'll discuss him later in his own section. After 5 nights of survival, Mary finally remembers what she saw that caused her nightmares. One day the rat showed up to the theater under the influence and is acting irrationally, and while Mary is playing hide-and-seek in the employees-only room, the rat storms in angrily searching for Mary. When he's confronted by the puppeteer, who was the actor behind Vinny, the reverse puppet. The two fight, and in self-defense, the puppeteer shoves the rat off balance, causing him to stumble back and slam his neck into the metal table behind him, killing him. The cat walks in and is horrified by what he sees, and says they need to report the incident to the police, which the puppeteer is hesitant to do out of fear of losing his acting career. Cat tries to call the police, and in a moment of desperation, the puppeteer wraps his hands around the rim of the mask and suffocates the cat. Unfortunately, the call still went through, and to avoid suspicion, he lied to the police, telling them he walked in and found them both already dead. The police arrive shortly, and the building is evacuated, except for Mary, who was so terrified by what she saw that she couldn't move, let alone leave the locker she was hiding in. She eventually leaves and returns home, with the event entirely repressed after she returns home, setting the whole game in motion. Flashing forward to sometime after Night 5, Mary finally tells her therapist what she saw, which leads to the cold investigation being reopened and the puppeteer finally being brought to justice after years of being let off scot-free, which leads into the final challenge of the game and the third threat I teased earlier. Monster Vinny is the puppeteer's sins manifested, and the final boss of Five Nights at Candy's 3, and from what I've seen, calling the final night of this game a challenge is an understatement. Monster Vinny acts the same way as Monster Rat from the base nights, except 20 times faster, having a movement pattern that's near unpredictable and frustrating to deal with, drawing circles mid-air like he's playing a Pokemon Ranger game, giving you literal seconds to react before killing your run faster than he killed Rat and Cat. In my opinion though, this is one of the most thematically perfect boss fights in any FNAF game. Fighting Vinny feels like you're literally fighting Mary's trauma, which you kind of are, and no matter what she does, it's not letting her go without a fight. This fight is one giant chess game in tone and difficulty. I've personally never attempted this night before because other than the fact that I've never gotten even that far into the game, I'm just not good enough at FNAF games to the point where I genuinely don't think I could beat it. But maybe one day I'll give it a try if I can get past the first few nights. I still enjoyed this game overall in the past when I played it, but it has a similar problem to me that I have with FNAF 4, where it feels like it focuses more on difficulty and scare factor, and the gameplay becomes overwhelming or luck-based at times as a result. I do think that the gameplay loop is more manageable than FNAF 4, since not everything is sound-based, and it is very easy to distinguish the sound cues compared to FNAF 4, when there are sound cues. But I feel like with practice you might be able to get a better grip of the gameplay loop, and I recommend checking out this game if you decide to. Overall, I definitely feel like this series deserves its classic title, because after all these years, while they obviously might have some flaws just like all video games, the series is still fondly remembered today and has aged fairly well. I'm definitely looking forward to the new games when they come out, and I hope I convinced you to give them a try for yourself. I hope you enjoyed the video as well. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. Not gonna force you, do what you want. Thanks for tuning in, and that's the video. Bye.